I once stood in the grandest concert halls of Europe, my name whispered with reverence, but that was long ago. Now I find myself before the rotted husk of the Briarcliff Opera House. It had been shuttered to mid-season decades earlier, after a fire consumed 37 attendees and every member of the orchestra. I wasn't there that night. I should have been, but I withdrew just days before the premiere. Some instinct, some chill in my gut told me to stay away. That decision has haunted me like a dissonant chord ever since. They said it was an accident, a faulty gas line. But whispers told of a curse, a punishment for the music played that night. A new, unfinished symphony I had composed and then abandoned. When the invitation arrived, unsigned and sealed with crimson wax bearing a symbol I didn't recognize, a chill spread through me, like the memory of a note played off-key, deep, instinctual, inescapable. I felt something old and unfinished stir inside me, like a baton poised mid-air, waiting to fall. Return, it said. Nothing more. Now in my 60s, hands trembling with age and guilt, I had no reason to resist, so I stepped inside. I remembered the final days before the tragedy, like fractured bars of music, discordant and disjointed. The orchestra had grown restless, unsettled. One violinist claimed she heard voices in the rest between measures. Another cellist refused to play certain passages of the symphony, saying they made her fingers burn. And me? I buried my doubts beneath rehearsals and rewrites until, one night, I simply walked out. I left without warning, boarded a train west, and never looked back. Until now. Inside, dust choked the air. Everything was damp, yet eerily preserved. Sheet music lay open on abandoned stands. Instruments rested in velvet-lined cases. The moth-eaten red curtain still hung. It was as if the orchestra had only stepped out for air. I descended into the conductor's pit. My fingers brushed a baton, identical to the one I'd used in rehearsals here, the one I thought I'd taken with me. But it felt too pristine, too deliberately placed, as if it had been waiting or watching. The lights flickered to life. A cold breath filled the room. Then came the sound. Strings tuning, woodwinds whispering, percussion pulsing like a heartbeat. I looked up. They were there. Pale figures, translucent yet distinct, filled the stage. Their eyes reposed, their bodies still, but their instruments floated before them, and the sound they made was alive. One of the spirits, a gaunt cellist with a scorched tuxedo, opened his eyes, just briefly, and he looked at me. I didn't run. I lifted the baton. The first piece I conducted was Mahler's Fifth. It began gently, mournful. The spirits played with such passion, the very air shimmered. The cellist swayed as if underwater, his bow carving impossible arcs. The violinists leaned in perfect, eerie unison. The percussionist struck invisible timpani. I swear the room pulsed in time with the beat. There was no audience, yet I felt the echo of applause. cold, invisible hands clapping around me. I was not alone. The next night, I opened the doors. Locals came, drawn by whispers and the promise of music. No tickets, no announcements. Word spread. Maestro Voss had returned. That night, I chose my own unfinished symphony. It started in D minor, the strings sawing out a deep, aching rhythm. The effect was immediate. People wept, a woman fainted, a child cried, not in fear or sadness, for repeating what she claimed were her dead father's last words. I kept conducting. The local paper called it a miracle. Music that heals the soul. But those who had attended changed. Hollow eyes, diminished emotions. One man told me he could no longer recognize his wife's face. Another dreamed of playing violin, but he had never held one in his life. I became obsessed. Each night I expanded the symphony, not from inspiration, but from the ghostly musicians. They showed me the notes in dreams. Some mornings, I woke with blood on my sheets. My fingers curled like I was still holding a bow. Cuts traced the contours of my palms, as though I'd performed in my sleep, violently, fervently, for an audience I never remembered. The performances grew longer, stranger. On the night of the full house, hundreds came, some from out of state. No one advertised it. They simply felt compelled. The opera house buzzed with a low hum of anticipation. I watched from the wings as people filed into velvet seats. Elderly couples, children clutching ticket stubs they were never given, even a man in a hospital gown. One woman held a framed portrait close to her chest, worn at the corners as if it had been touched often. Another whispered names under her breath like a prayer. The spirits played with chilling perfection. The music swelled, immense and overwhelming. People wept, laughed, and screamed. One man gouged out his eyes in an apparent act of joy. A couple danced in the aisle, locked in a trance. A teenager stood and conducted beside me, mimicking my every move with blank precision. I reached the final movement, a fever-born crescendo so intricate it felt like folding sound into itself. The final note rang out. Then collapsed. Over 24 slumped in their seats, some dead, others alive but unreachable. A reporter later called it a mass fugue state. I dropped the baton. The spirit thrones. They bowed and vanished. The opera house was condemned. Again. I disappeared, leaving only my marked-up sheet music and a single line scrawled in red ink. The dead do not seek applause, only an audience.